NBA Jam Tournament Edition is an arcade port of the iconic classic game that was released for the PlayStation back in 1995. And this would have been part of the PlayStation's launch lineup, especially in North America. That takes all of the attributes and elements and takes all of the unique charm from the 16-bit ports seen on the likes of the Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, and just brings us to the PlayStation, which again would improve on various aspects of the game's visuals with the graphics, even the gameplay speed, and generally how it plays overall. It keeps its iconic list of characters and even sports personalities from teams in the NBA league at that time, and utilises all of the quirky and unusual gameplay elements and unique special moves that had become iconic with the NBA Jam franchise. The NBA Jam series during the 90s was something of a phenomenon, as it was extremely popular in the arcades, and with later ports of the game being added to the likes of the Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo systems, just only added to the heightened excitement surrounding the game itself, that would spawn many different sequels on future consoles, even with the PlayStation itself. And the game would also feature licensed teams, players, and even some of the in-game announcers as well that would have been reflective of that time, where they added in loads of funny elements and humorous kind of quips and one-liners that just added to the overall fun experience that the game presented. And it generally was a classic in its own right. So by the time the PlayStation rolled around in 1994 in Japan, and then with 95 in both North America and Europe, it was only natural that an NBA Jam game was going to appear on the system in some shape or form, and quite rightly so. And again, the game would prove to be very, very popular among fans, and it was a really good game to add to the launch lineup of the PlayStation, as it had all of those elements that made for a very fun experience. And the fact is, NBA Jam, although while challenging, especially when you're playing single player, where people would get the most out of it is playing with their mates, as it's just a lot of fun. Even from my own experience going back, I remember a mate of mine that lived across the road, he had a Sega Mega Drive, and I remember one particular weekend he took his Mega Drive over to the house and he had gotten a loan of NBA Jam. Now I remember vaguely playing it to a certain degree, but I hadn't a clue what I was doing. I didn't really understand it all that much, but I remember my mate and my brothers more specifically loved it. They were just addicted to it. They were having a ball playing it, and you could see that it was like basketball but on steroids. It was just on a completely different level, and it was so much fun. So even moving forward then with the likes of this version of the game, now I never played the tournament edition originally on the PlayStation. My experience with an NBA Jam game would be with NBA Jam Extreme, that would be released in 1996 on the PlayStation, that would move away from the 2D style visuals or 16-bit style visuals seen in the previous game to 3D elements. But again, that game was also an extremely fun game as well. I have covered that in a previous video on the channel, so I'll make sure to drop a link in the description so you can check out that video also. And the fun thing with that was, I have to say now, again, with typical NBA Jam style, it was tough to get used to and hard to control, but where you had so much fun was playing with your mates, and even not just against your mates, you'd be playing co-op, the two of you would be on the same team trying to compete against the computer, and it was just a blast. So it was the commentary, the special moves, there were certain moves that literally you go up like a helicopter and you'd nearly like as if you're flying out of the arena to come down and slam and nearly break the basket. It was hilarious. So that in itself, I remember playing that game an absolute ton, myself and my mates and even my brothers, we all loved that game. We just played it for ages. It was so much fun. But even going back to playing the original games, and even with the tournament edition, even going back to playing it now, you can still see how much fun it is. Although I will admit, I'm not as good at it as I used to be. I can still pull off a few 3-pointers here and now, but that's about the height of it, because the computer AI in this game is very aggressive. When you try to get near the basket at all, I found the only way to really score points was to literally throw from outside of the 3-point area to really have a chance, especially if you're playing with a good player that has good 3-point shooting abilities, with the likes of Scottie Pippen of the Chicago Bulls. He'd be one of the better players to use, because you can guarantee nearly 9 times out of 10 you would score a 3-pointer with ease. But if you're trying to dunk the ball, especially against the AI opponents, you may forget about it, because no sooner have you gotten rid of them, they're literally shooting up the court after you, and they block every shot that you take. It doesn't matter what you try and do, if you do manage to pull off a dunk, it's very, very slim. So I had to resort to taking shots from outside of the 3-point area to have any chance of winning, but even at that, you still got slaughtered. The game is just so difficult. Even going back to playing it now, it's it's as difficult as I remember, and it hasn't changed. It still looks awesome for its time, like considering it's more of a 16-bit game, but just as upgraded to the PlayStation spec of the time, with advanced kind of like visuals and just smoother all around and faster gameplay than what it would have been seen on the likes of the Sega Mega Drive. But that still doesn't take away from how difficult this game is. This game is ridiculous. I remember even years later I ended up getting NBA Jam on the PS3, and again that was another awesome game, although the online on it was terrible because you could never even get into a game on it, which was a pity because you wanted to play it with your mates and you couldn't even find the game on the servers. It was so bad, the online on that game, so you had to resort to playing on the single player modes, and that was where you had the most fun. It really was a cool game. But in general, any type of NBA Jam game that you go to play, whether it be one of the older games or the more modern games, there's still a fun selection of games to play. I even remember playing, my mate had gotten an NBA Jam game on the PS2, and even that was a lot of fun as well. Although I will admit my favourite ones were definitely NBA Jam Extreme and even the NBA Jam on the PS3. They would have won the ones that I would have played the most. But even this early one, the Tournament Edition, is still an awesome game. But again, it's really difficult. Only more extreme players and more experienced players will definitely get the benefit out of this, because it's so, for me it's just so difficult. But it's still a fun game. It doesn't take away from what this game represents, and I would love to see a new NBA Jam game being released, even in this kind of format, but as long as it's made with modern controls and that it's easier to pick up and play. I would definitely get it in a heartbeat and I'd play it all over again, because it's just, these games are a laugh. They're just so much fun, and it was definitely a fitting entry to the early point of the PlayStation. It was definitely a good game to add to the launch lineup of games, as it had everything in abundance. It had fun, it had character, it had charm, presented a hell of a challenge, but it was definitely one of the best multiplayer games that you could have played at that time. So that in itself was a good reason to add it to the launch lineup. And I would love to know your thoughts on NBA Jam Tournament Edition for the PlayStation, and what do you think of this series of games overall? Did you manage to own this game back when you got your PlayStation back in the day? And if so, what did you think of the game overall? Did you enjoy it, or did you find it as frustrating as many of us have? I'd love to hear whatever stories you do have of this awesome game, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future videos. And if you would like to see more content on the channel around other types of basketball games seen on the PlayStation, then you can check out this playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.